I was craving egg rolls today, and since it happens to be one of my favorite Nigerian snacks, I decided to make it from scratch. I've never made egg rolls before, so come with me as I try this for the first time. First, I boiled my eggs. I used only 4 eggs because I didn't want to make too much, being my first time. I sieved the flour. It's very important for you to sieve your flour before using it to bake or make any pastries, just to avoid any insects or weevils. I added my sugar, my baking powder, my powdered milk, and then I added cinnamon and allspice. I was supposed to use nutmeg, but I didn't have nutmeg at home, so I decided to use cinnamon and allspice, and I later discovered that it altered the color of the dough. So I went in with salt and then my margarine, and then I went ahead to mix it to make sure that all the margarine disappeared in the flour before then adding the remaining wet ingredients. Please note that my hands were thoroughly washed before using them to mix. I then went ahead to add water into my egg, and I added it into the dry ingredients and began to mix. I mixed gently for about 5 minutes before setting it aside. You don't need to mix your egg roll dough too thoroughly. You just need to mix it a little bit and then you set it aside. Before cutting out the dough, I had to sprinkle a little bit of flour on my chopping board. That's to avoid the dough sticking to the chopping board while I try to cut it up. So I cut my dough in 4 equal parts, and that's because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to be making too much because this is my first time making egg rolls. So I'm going to be making just 4 egg rolls just for a start. After cutting my dough in 4 parts, the next step was to just put some flour in my hands to avoid the dough sticking to my hands, and then I flattened the dough a little bit and then wrapped the dough around my egg, and then I just began to pinch and pinch all through until I got to the top, and then I cut off the bottom just like this, added some flour to my hands again, and then I began to mold. You mold like so until your egg roll is well rounded and you can't see any crack or any hole, just to avoid it busting open while you're frying it. I repeated the process all through, and then I went ahead to set the egg rolls that I already molded aside and just went ahead to heat my oil, which I didn't show in this video. One very important tip to note when you're making your egg roll is to make sure that your eggs have cooled down completely. So after boiling your eggs, like for me, I made sure that I boiled my eggs before I started mixing my dough, just to make sure that my eggs were completely cooled down before molding them like this, just to avoid having hot eggs in your dough. Since I haven't tried that before, I don't know what that could cause, but just to be on the safe side, just make sure that your eggs are thoroughly cooled before you go ahead to mold your egg rolls. Like I said, I repeated this process all through and then set aside and went ahead to heat my oil. I heat up my vegetable oil on low heat for about 3 minutes, and I decided to go in with my egg rolls. And at this point, I realized that the oil that I had added in my pan wasn't enough, so it didn't cover the egg rolls completely. So I had to stand by to keep flipping to avoid unevenly fried egg rolls. At this point, I noticed that the oil was getting too hot, so I decided to turn the heat down a little lower, even though I had started frying on low heat, but I had to turn down the heat a little lower just to let the egg rolls fry evenly. After frying for about 7 to 8 minutes on very low heat, my egg rolls were perfect golden brown, and so I took them out of the oil, placed them on a paper towel to drain completely. Look how perfect these egg rolls are. I was so proud of myself while taking this out of the oil, because this is my first time making egg rolls and I didn't expect to get this result. I thought that at first I thought the dough wasn't properly mixed and it was going to break open in the oil, but it stayed put. I was so excited. Now it's time to cut open the big reveal. Voila! Here you go, your perfectly made Nigerian egg rolls. This is one of the best snacks that you can ever have. And if you're going to be trying this, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to be dropping the recipe soon, so let me know if you're going to be trying this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.